Here we are with Becky and Tamron 28-75 2.8 lens. Yes, you heard me right. There's a Tamron 28-75 2.8 lens, and it's not a Nikon 28-75 that was based on Tamron design. Just came out based on Generation 2 design.
We want to tell you what we think of this lens and how it performs. Whether or not it's compared to the Nikon lens or the earlier Tamron version, we're just going to see how it does.
So there's a different optical design between Generation 1, aka Nikon 28-75 lens, and the Gen 2 28-75 real Tamron lens. So the Tamron lens has 17 elements in 15 groups, while the Nikon design based on Gen 1 Tamron is 15 elements in 12 groups. What kind of difference will it make for any type of work? Let's start with portraits.
This is the kind of lens that you would use for a combination of perhaps event photography, portrait photography, day-to-day. If you don't have the budget for something like the 24-70 2.8S, then this could be a good alternative. Obviously, Nikon brought out the 28-75, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but we're going to test this out on some portraits. So I'm going to take pictures of Con. I'm going to attempt to. Here, so I'm at 75mm at f2.8 right now. Okay, it's your happiest face. Oh. Now I'm going to do f4, and just for testing purposes I'll do f8 as well, just so you can see what the background looks like. So at 2.8 at 75mm you do get a bit of vignetting. You do also get a nice out of focus background. It's not the same kind of rendering that you would get if you were shooting with a prime lens, obviously, but it is perfectly adequate if you are just doing sort of semi-serious or fairly casual portrait work. I wanted to talk very quickly about some of the physical differences. Now, apart from the fact that the lenses are almost exactly the same weight, have the same diameter, and ultimately are about the same size on the camera. I think there's a centimetre difference or something, not even that. The key difference with the Tamron is that they've added a couple of features. They've got their little Tamron utility USB port right here. Again, it doesn't have a cover on it. I would love it if Tamron would just include a little rubber cover. They're like less than 30p.
That's true, but at the same time, your Android phone or your latest iPhone will have open USB-C port there as well, and there's no little cover there, so there's no judgment on Tamron's decisions. They should have some weather sealings around the port, and you will need a USB-C cable to update the future firmwares that may come. Now, the utility also will allow you to customize certain things. You can set your focus into non-linear performance or linear performance if you want to use manual focus. There are other features that may come in the future as well, like function button assignment as well.
The function button does act as a third function button, so if you want to, you can set that up. The Nikon lens doesn't have any of those features, so if you like an extra little button on the side of your lens, then it's the Tamron for you. Doing a very scientific test here of the focusing speed. I've gone focusing on his hand and then focusing away. It looks pretty fast from what you're doing right there.
All right. In my personal opinion, the Tamron lens is slightly faster focusing, and I'm talking on the longer end of things, because at 28 they're about the same. At 75, I do find that Tamron focuses from infinity to the closest focusing distance much faster than Nikon. We're talking about maybe a second difference. Will it make a difference for you? I'm not sure, but if you shooting action sports, that could be useful. Again, you probably for this type of work, you will use a longer lens. Keep in mind that for video work as well, if you need to refocus really quickly, that will make a lot of difference. And if you have a tracked focus and let's say the subject is moving towards the frame, that perhaps is going to make Tamron lens a little bit different. However, I think the speed has to be quite fast, so someone has to run towards the frame more than the walk, because if the person is walking, even in fast pace towards the frame, Nikon will perform as well as the Tamron lens.
So we're shooting at 75 at 2.8. Okay, and now we've got some points of light in the background, so I can see the bokeh truly now. It is nice and round. Yeah, and it looks decently sharp at 2.8. Depth of field is quite shallow. Closest focusing distance on this one is 18 centimeters, whereas with the Nikon it's 19 centimeters. So fine, makes a little bit of difference there. It's about a 1 to 2.7 reproduction. So it's not a macro lens, obviously. It's not marketed as a macro lens, but it will do nicely for some close-up shots. And you know me, I'm always about going in for the details and taking pictures of flowers.
So does 1 centimeter makes all the difference?
Well, no, to be honest, it doesn't. In a practical sense, it doesn't make much difference at all, the 1 centimeter. By getting a little bit closer, you have a slightly shallower depth of field, but that doesn't necessarily work in your favor for macro work because what you're taking a picture of is going to mostly be out of focus anyway. It is a struggle. That's always the balance when it comes to macro. But I see what they're talking about with the bokeh now that I've shot against some sources of light to really see how those bubbles look, how bubbly they are. So we've done our brick wall tests, we've done some portrait shots, we're just generally formulating opinions about this lens, and it's been quite interesting, hasn't it?
It is. I personally think if you've got 28-75 Nikon lens, there's no need to go with this one. For the simple reason, they're very, very close in performance. Now, if you don't have one, and you're on a budget, you really want to have a mid-range 2.8 zoom, because yes, Nikon 1 is expensive. You got 24-70, obviously 2.8 Nikon, and it's a top-of-the-range professional use great lens. Now you have 28-75 Nikon. It's a little bit more expensive, and it's based on the older design from Tamron. So this is slightly newer design. It's a little bit sharper. Especially in the corners, really. The sensor sharpness is more or less the same on the two. Autofocus I found a little bit faster. Vignetting, though, is a little bit worse compared to Nikon.
That's right. So the Tamron seems to pretty much get rid of the vignetting by f11. Obviously, it reduced significantly from 2.8 to 4, from 4 to 5.6, f8, etc. But 11 is really where it starts to completely disappear. With the Nikon 28-75, you've got no vignetting from f8, so it's at all ranges, all focal length, which means if vignetting is something that you don't want in your shots, then the Nikon one, obviously the better choice in that case.
Yes, I mean vignetting is easily correctable in the post, so generally it's not an issue, and it's very, very usable at 5.6. So between 5.6 and f11, the difference is so light, really. What I found is for portrait work, the Gen 2 Tamron design brings the subject a little bit more to the front, so you almost have this slightly better 3D pop compared to Nikon one. At a 4, they're about the same, really. By 2.8, there's a tiny, tiny bit difference. Again, splitting hairs.
Okay, so we did autofocus tests and confirmed that the Tamron is, from what we can tell, a little bit faster. Newer motor, which does make a little bit of sense in terms of sharpness from what we can see at 100% with our brick wall test. It looks like the Nikon is slightly better in the center, but that the Tamron is better in the corners, so it's kind of either or there.
Yeah, on a longer end though, at 75mm, Tamron is a little bit sharper than Nikon, but we're talking about tiny bit. So if you're looking at mid-range zoom lens on a budget, the Tamron 2.8 version is slightly better, slightly sharper. We're talking about splitting hair there, but it is a little bit cheaper. It's £849 in the UK, it's $999 in the US. The Nikon version in the US is $999, so the basic price the same in the US. In UK, it is slightly more expensive by £30, which is $189. So really, in this case, I would say, do you trust the brand more than anything else? If you prefer to have all your Nikon lenses be Nikon lenses, really, so then stick with Nikon, the difference is negligible. But if you're looking for this extra 1-2% performance over the Nikon version, then go with Tamron. Obviously, you need to look in terms of servicing and warranties things. So there's a lot more goes into the place when the price is about the same.
That's right. But other than that, we are impressed by this offering from Tamron. I didn't totally understand why they decided to bring out this lens, but now we do see why they have done a revamp of this lens. It does make a lot of sense, but we're interested to hear your thoughts. So let us know what you think about this new offering in the comments below.
It makes sense to you, it doesn't make sense to me.
Just let us know what you think.
Exactly.
We want to hear from you.
The conversation continues. In the meantime, thanks for watching this video. If you found this video useful, give us a like and subscribe.
Yes, and if you found it super useful, there's always super thanks as well. And do not forget that you can buy all of these lenses from Grays of Westminster.